only thing we have to fear is fear itself.
The National Weather Service has issued a severe thunderstorm warning.
Welcome to the Common Sense Practical Prepper Podcast, where prepping doesn't have to be complicated or expensive. Coming to you from a well-defended off-grid compound high in the mountains. Coming to you from his Florida room in Richmond, Virginia. Neither off-grid nor well-defended, unless you count as chickens and cats. Here is your host, Keith.
And that was your professional voiceover guy that was missing from the previous episode 51, that I recorded in Jacksonville, Florida last week. Hey, everybody, this is Keith, and welcome back to the Common Sense Practical Prepper Podcast, episode 52. Today is August 2nd, 2023. Did you all hear that late last week or early this week, an illegal Chinese biolab was raided and shut down in a very small town in California? Now, this building first came to the city's attention last year when a code enforcement officer, I guess this is an officer, kind of like building inspector, health inspector, to make sure everything's, up to snuff, up to code with your particular business. He or she noticed a hose sticking out of the lab in a place where hoses should not be sticking out of. Okay, I don't own a biochemistry lab. I've never even worked in a biolab, but I'm pretty sure, dollars to donuts, that you should not remove any liquid from the facility through a hose stuck through an open window or sticking out of the rear door that's propped open facing the alley. That's just me. I went to college, but my degree is not in chemistry, biochemistry, or anything relatively close. That's just a layman's opinion. So the city was aware that there was this building and there was something going on in the building. Now, they had been in contact with the owner, manager, whatever you want to call it, a guy they can't even really verify his true identity. They had been exchanging emails and I guess official letters back and forth. The county or the city was asking about, they needed some documentation about the mice, how they're caring for the mice, all sorts of things that the owners or managers of the lab failed to provide. Last year, the code enforcement officer sees this hose. In March, at least a couple, 3 months later, they executed a search warrant on this building and found dead mice, thousands of dead mice. There were mice that were still alive. They were being poorly fed, poorly watered, not taken care of at all. They found vials, containers, buckets full of everything you can imagine, and probably a mixture of everything else you can imagine. Chlamydia, E. coli, pneumonia, hepatitis B and C, herpes 1 and 5. I thought there was only 1 and 2. Herpes 1, herpes 2. There's 5 now? Where did the other 3 come from? Rubella, is that German measles, I think? And then malaria. Another article said they actually found coronavirus, COVID, which doesn't surprise me at all. So anyway, the place gets shut down. They sampled as much of the stuff as they safely could. They got rid of freezers, fridges, just full of stuff. Like I said, all sorts of containers filled with stuff they would never be able to identify. They just quit messing with it because it was too dangerous, and they have since gotten rid of all this stuff. Well, again, I don't think the people running this lab had the best interest of the townsfolk, or anybody else for that matter, in mind when they were doing all this crazy experimentation. So I got a lot of this information I'm getting from the UK Daily Mail, and because I couldn't find a lot of detailed information from Fox, MSN, MSNBC, and a few other of the networks, I could not get a lot of detailed information. So I went to the UK Daily Mail. So the UK Daily Mail reached out to Dr. Amesh Adalja, a senior scholar at the Johns Hopkins Center for Health and Safety up in Johns Hopkins in Maryland, I believe, right outside of D.C. Quote, "It's unclear what was going on there, but I don't think any of those things the organisms we're talking about, they're fairly ordinary. those would not be efficient biological weapons versus something like anthrax, which we've seen used as a weapon before. He further positioned himself by saying, this operation could have been launched several years ago as a COVID diagnostics manufacturer in order to profit from the dire need in 2020 for COVID tests. So this doctor wants to tell us a rundown, illegal Chinese biolab, nothing to worry about because chlamydia, E. coli, pneumonia, hepatitis B and C, herpes 1 and 5, rubella, and malaria, those are fairly ordinary. So we don't need to worry about those. Now, those are the ones that were identified. This doctor has no idea what he's talking about because who knows what else was there that they could not identify or just failed to identify because there was so much of it. And to think that this lab several years ago could have been launched to serve as a diagnostics manufacturer to either make COVID tests or to, I guess, get the results to actually test the tests to find out whether or not the person was COVID positive. If he thinks that is going to fly, that is absolutely insane. There is no indication from anything that I've read or any of the photos I've looked at that this was anything other than an illegal lab. You can run all the illegal labs and legal labs in China that you want, but it just strikes me very odd, given COVID, why we have this secret biolab in this old rundown building in Southern California. I mean, it makes no sense to me, but in a lot of ways, it does make some sense. So I'm going to try to follow this as best I can. I doubt if anybody's going to jail, and I doubt if we'll really get the true background on these people and why they were there doing what they were doing. Okay, I have a little Italian restaurant not far from the house that I absolutely love to go to. Been going there for, ever since I was a rookie cop. So 30 some years altogether, I've been going there. Well, there was a little sign next to the cash register that they were charging 3.9% debit card processing fee. I'm sorry, they kind of flipped the script. Charging you 3.9% more for a non-cash transaction. So 3.9% to use a debit or a credit card. Now, I am familiar with debit card and credit card processing fees, and they can get a little complicated. They can get expensive depending on who you're working with. But on the average, it's 34 cents a swipe. Again, give or take. So when they swipe your debit card for the $20 pizza, the $30 meal, $20, and now that costs them 34 cents. You take the profit of the meal and you just, 34 cents, you got to add that to the overhead, I guess. And then so basically every time I paid with a debit card up until recently, they were making 34 cents less than if I had given them cash. Okay, 3.9%. So a $30, let's say the check is $30 even with tax and all that good stuff, $1.17, more than 3 times what it cost to swipe that card. Now, I'm not going to ask the owner about it. It's really none of my business. I'm not going to give the guy a hard time, but I just find that a little ridiculous. But go ahead and raise the price of your spaghetti by 10 cents, 30 cents, 40 cents. Do something like that. But just don't be so blatant as to put that out there, because that just it doesn't make any sense to me. And if you'd rather folks pay with cash, I get it, but I don't think you need to add these exorbitant fees on to someone who wants to pay with a debit card. A burger place I go to every once in a while, maybe once a week, once every other week near work, it's like $15 burger and fries and all that good stuff with the soda. It came out to, I think it came out to the $14. They added $2 and I forget what they called it on the check. It was like other tax. And then it says like non-cash. And I'm like, wait a second, a $14 burger and they add 2. There were no signs saying, as of July 1st, an additional whatever percent or whatever fee is being added for all non-cash transactions. I just happened to look at my check pretty close because normally I get the same thing. It is always, $13.74, $13.90. So it was something like that. But when I saw that it was a little more Tuesday when I went, I'm like, wait a second, what is this? And other tax. And it added up to right at $2 for my $14 and some change burger. Again, no warning. Hey, there's this additional fee. Unless something's going on with debit card transactions and fees like that, I'm not really sure why they feel the need to charge that extra. That can get very expensive when you have a lot of people going out to a restaurant. So really weird. And I'm going to keep an eye on that. If I hit any restaurants this weekend, I'm going to actually look for the signs, or I'll ask the waitress or the servers or whatever, do you have a additional fee for non-cash transactions? Let's talk about my garden real quick. Garden is coming along really well, but here's the deal. You guys remember several weeks ago, something got into my garden and ate all the tops of my cucumber plants. They were very, very small. Got them from Petersburg Trading Company. I know I spoke about them as well. Great selection, great prices. So I think it was the next weekend, went down and repurchased a flat, I guess, of cucumber plants. Tore the other ones up, put the new cucumbers in. They start doing their thing, and I build some little trellises for them to try to keep them off the ground to get the cucumbers. Well, the other day I noticed that I've got a couple of cucumbers, but it looks like I've got some zucchini growing as well. And now that I go out and I look at everything, of the 18, I think maybe there's about 24 separate cucumber plants that were planted. Of the 24, 3 are cucumbers. 21 are zucchinis. Now, go back in time about 5 or 6 days ago, having a conversation with a gentleman at work who has a huge garden. And he said, I'm never going back to the Petersburg Trading Company because I thought I was buying a certain type of tomato, and it ended up an entirely different type. Now, I get it, but would you want to buy, a tomato like there's like Better Boy. If you want to buy a Better Boy tomato, that's what you look for. You don't want the Roma tomatoes or whatever kind of tomatoes they have out there. You want whatever the Better Boy tomatoes for a particular reason. Maybe you're canning them, you're making spaghetti sauce, then you get something else. Immediately when I realized 21 of the 24 plants were zucchini, I went right back to that conversation I had with that guy at work. And I'm like, well, now I know I'm not going back to the Petersburg Trading Company unless getting something I absolutely can identify. But, I'm not a plant guy. So it says cucumbers, it has the little plastic signs in them, the little plastic stakes. I just grab it and go because I think I'm getting cucumbers. But in this case, I was getting zucchini. Anyway, zucchini for, the next 18 months, I guess. So plenty of zucchini going on there. But I really wish I had the cucumbers because I love cucumbers. So the chickens in the heat. Last week, 4 days in a row of near 100-degree temperatures. Put the heat index, depending on the day, 106, 110, 111 one day, which is really, really hot. Trust me. A couple of these days were the same days when I was down in Jacksonville, and it was cooler in Jacksonville, Florida than it was in Richmond, Virginia. But thankfully, the heat has subsided in the last few days, mid-90s, low 90s, and now upper 80s with a relatively low humidity. So it's much more tolerable than it was about a week ago. So with the chickens, I made sure I changed their water every single day, even though with the 5-gallon container, the water, they only drank a gallon or a gallon and a half, maybe 2 gallons. I just went ahead and changed it anyway. All 3, double checked their feed to make sure they were doing well. Really cut down on the snacks that I give them, the other grains, the scratch grains that I give them. I wanted them, obviously they're going to eat a lot less in hot weather, and I would rather have them eat their feed, which is more nutritious than the scratch, what they consider treats. Let's see, watermelon, frozen pineapple, and some frozen fruit cocktail. They absolutely love that. Also got a little kiddie pool that you hook up a hose to and has like a little sprinkler around the sides. Well, Ripley and Runt were the only 2 chickens that thought it was cool to get inside, no pun intended, to get inside this little kiddie pool and go ahead and soak their feet. Because the 2 parts of a chicken's body that dissipates heat are the feet, the legs, and then the face. Obviously, everything else is covered with feathers, so they're not going to get a lot of ventilation. So if you ever felt a chicken's, have them stand on your hand or their foot or you feel their leg, it is very, very warm. So Ripley and Runt love that because as they were in there just kind of standing, I'd throw a few treats in and they'd walk around. And it was funny, the other chickens were looking at them with their wings out, trying to get cool, panting because they were overheated. And then there's Ripley and Runt just looking at them, wings down, very, very active. They've cooled off a tremendous amount. Of all the chickens, those two were the only ones that really took advantage of the kiddie pool. So the kiddie pool's put away, and if it gets up in the high 90s again, I will break that out. But $12 purchase, it was certainly worth that. Okay, folks, let's see. Freeze dryer. More scrambled eggs that I've got frozen, ready to go into the freeze dryer. Again, was out of town last week. It did not have a chance to put the 7 trays of scrambled eggs into the freeze dryer, so I can go ahead and take care of that. Hopefully, I'll get a chance to do that this weekend. I also need to get another little fan. The chickens have my fans. I'll get a little fan for the freeze dryer. I have it blowing on the vacuum pump because that gets super, super hot. There's little heat fins or whatever that helps dissipate the heat away from the casing of the vacuum pump, but I always put a little fan on that as well just to help it out. So I need to get one of those, a little $5 or $10 fan at Home Depot, and then I will be good to go. I'm still on the Twitter. Search Common Sense Practical Prepper Podcast, or you can, the actual tag name, I guess, is prep_podcast. Practical Prep Podcast at gmail.com if you want to reach me there. And I got several emails over the last few weeks, and I will make sure that I read those next week. Well, folks, I know a little short podcast tonight, but a lot of stuff going on at work, and tomorrow and Friday are going to be super, super busy, and a lot of stuff to do in the yard this weekend as well. So again, thank you for stopping by. Everybody enjoy the rest of your week. Everybody have a fantastic weekend. Stay safe. And as usual, be safe out there. Take care of one another. And until next time.
Thanks for listening to the Common Sense Practical Prepper Podcast. Be sure to subscribe so you don't miss an episode. While you're at it, help spread the word by leaving a rating and review.